This is TWiT.
Let's debunk, or maybe not. So we've been talking about, and I think debunking rumors that the iPhone 10 supply was weak. Rumors from Digitimes and other supply chains, KGI, that Apple was disappointed with the sales. That now it's coming from the Wall Street Journal. Apple to cut iPhone 10 production in the face of weak demand. They're quoting people familiar with the matter saying that instead of 40 million iPhones, Apple plans to make 20 million this quarter. That's a 50% drop. Other people, according to the Wall Street Journal, familiar with the iPhone supply chain, said Apple had cut orders for components used in the iPhone 10 by 60%. Now, Thursday, Apple's going to tell us how many iPhones they've sold.
Yep.
They won't break it down by 8s and 10s and 7s, and I guess you could still buy a 6S's.
I'll have to do ASP math to do that, Leo.
Is this credible, Renee?
It is. So anything is absolutely credible, and I prefer stories like this that have actual reporters' names on them and sourcing and things, because all too often, even the Wall Street Journal, even Nikkei, even NBC will post up these unattributed, unnamed, really bizarre, Apple has increased, decreased this supplier, Apple has cut, increased orders, and that always smells to me of stock manipulation. And, I don't think media should ever be a tool of financial analysts or Wall Street people aiming to cover their shorts or their buys or anything like that. But also, we see these stories so freaking every year at this time. And once in a while, they're true, and most often they're not. And then we see a story saying that Apple didn't really do this, or Apple actually cut orders at this supplier but brought on this other supplier. And in year past, Tim Cook has strongly cautioned investors that they shouldn't follow these things too closely, because what Apple does with any one supplier or any one set of orders is generally not reflective of what they're doing with the overall business. And one of the important things to me is that, these are all cool and interesting stories and people flock to them, but there's a lot of people who either lose or make a lot of money based on these stories.
And we should say up front, this is not a show for investors. This is not a show by analysts. This is, and frankly, I don't judge technology by how well it sells or how poorly it sells.
Totally.
When I said the Apple Watch was a flop, people said, but Leo, it's selling like crazy. And I said that, but I'm not talking about it flop financially. I'm talking about it as a technical product. And by the way, I've revised my opinion. The Series 3 has completely turned that around from my point of view. However, that's the point, is we're talking about end users buying products and whether this product is worth buying. So the only thing that would be relevant about this story, it's not a financial story for us, is there something wrong with the iPhone 10 that consumers are rejecting? And the first thing you'd look at is cost.
Yeah, cost and the other models, because Apple put out 3 flagship models.
It's the first time ever Apple's had all of these models for sale at the same time. And I think you could also perhaps point to Face ID. And I hear this from a lot of people saying, I like Touch ID. I'm not convinced in Face ID. And even people who have iPhone 10 are saying, yeah, maybe it's not as good as Face ID. And then third and final factor might be the size of the screen, which is slightly smaller than a plus sized. And so you're sacrificing a little screen real estate because of the bars at the top.
It's kind of narrow too.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing from a lot of people is that it was just hard to differentiate between what they're getting with the iPhone 10 and what they're getting with the iPhone 8. And then you realize that these are people who are considering upgrading from an iPhone 7. I think that in retrospect, it might have been more interesting if they went for really here's the ceramic case. Here is the solid 18-karat gold case that it comes in. Not that's ridiculous, but the idea of here's what you're getting. Here is something really distinctive you're getting for the extra $1,000 that doesn't require a technology demo, doesn't require thousands and thousands of words of columnists explaining how Face ID works. Here is something where hold one in your hand, hold the other one in your hand. If you had the capability of spending $1,000 for, again, the version of this phone with the AM/FM radio, no air conditioning, would you get that? That would lead you to get that instead of even spending $1,000 for the iPhone 8, but with all the bells and whistles on it. I just think that as impressive as the iPhone 10 is, I just don't think they managed to create a package that appealed to those people in the way that it needed to get that extra couple $100. It's interesting to see that we sometimes say that, oh well, Apple people are, they're that's where all the money is. Those are the people who are the really exclusive budgeted buyers. But it turns out they're just as sensitive to price as anybody else. It's not, they may have $1,000 to spend, but they're not going to throw away $200 on a phone if they don't know what they're going to get for it.
I have to say, I purely industrial design, I think it's beautiful.
Yeah,
I like the stainless steel edge. I think it's a gorgeous phone. I'm very happy with the iPhone 10, but I'm less price sensitive than the average bear because I got to buy it no matter what.
And I think for me, the only things that I find difficult are sometimes quitting apps that don't want to, like, now you don't have that hardware, like I'm going to push this down.
I like the new UI though.
Oh no, I like the new UI.
I really like swiping up. I like swiping.
But there are
side to
times
side.
there are some apps that don't properly support it. Don't give you something to grab onto, and it becomes like this thing to get out of them. And the second one is like if you want to take picture. I take a lot of pictures of. And it seems like this like hit and miss thing about when I hit the two buttons, whether it's actually going to take a picture or it's going to go to sleep.
There are a few, and there are
so,
a few issues with,
So there's
the mechanical switches,
But other than that, it's definitely, I mean, obviously the best phone I've ever had. I mean, I think the pictures are great.
It's kind of a fetish object for me.
Yeah, it's
I mean, honestly, it's more emotional than technical. It's more. And actually, I do like the UI. I feel like that's a good UI going
overall.
forward.
I love the UI. It's just a couple little
but you're right,
things,
and you can't blame Apple for that. That's really apps not probably not taking advantage. You see, still to this day, I'll get app updates that say now works with the iPhone 10, and I said, "Well, it didn't work before."
Well, and it's confusing sometimes. Like Google Maps, when you swipe up, it doesn't take you home. It intercepts that and brings up the information box.
Right.
And then people don't realize you have to swipe up again to get back to home. They just think it's broken.
Yeah.
So it's hard to, like, they have their own paradigms, and sometimes they collide with Apple's.
So because this is byline by Yuko Kubota in Beijing and Trip Mickle in San Francisco, because it's the Wall Street Journal, we're going to give this some credence, right? I mean,
yeah.
Now, how much of it is that Apple orders a bunch of stuff up front and doesn't it usually drop the number of components it buys in the second quarter?
I think that what Apple is incredibly good at is managing their supply chain.
Right.
So they're going to tell everybody, make as much as you possibly can. We're gonna have all of these
fill demand.
and then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to like immediately stop that as soon as you know that you can coast for this number of months on what they're producing. You definitely want everybody ramping to 100%.